So hello everyone, welcome to another video on the Internet of Things. We were doing this module 4 of our course, and till now we have done two videos on this course. Right? In the first video we talked about this data handling and analysis, that is the handling of big data, and in the last video we talked about the different aspects of data analysis. In this video we are going to talk about this technology called cloud computing, and then we are going to look at the characteristic of cloud computing, different deployment models and different service models of cloud computing, and then we are going to look at a few technologies that are relevant in the context of cloud computing. Okay, so with that, without much further ado, let us start this video. So what is cloud computing? Cloud computing is the on-demand delivery of IT resources over the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. Right. So these resources include tools and applications like data storage, servers, database, networking, and software. So instead of buying or owning and maintaining physical data center and server, you can access technology services such as computing power, storage, and database on a as needed basis from a cloud provider. Okay, so what is it saying? So before we talk about cloud computing, we have to talk about what was the traditional way of doing computing. Okay, in our traditional way, okay, what do? We buy computer, right? We buy, say I have to do some heavy task. Okay, say I have to host a website that will be accessed by user around the clock, or say I am going to do some big machine learning model, right? I'm going to train some model for machine learning. So how was I going to do this traditionally? For hosting this website, I would have purchased a server, right? And in this server, I would have had some storage. I would have had networking technologies to connect my server to the internet. Then I would have needed a static IP address, so that I will register this static IP address in the DNS when someone will type the URL of my website www.example.com. So the DNS will match this URL to my static IP, and then through the networking devices, the request will come to my server, and then from my storage, my data will go to the processor. My some kind of algorithm will run on the data, and then it will be presented to the user in some format as required. Okay, in HTML or whatever, XML or whatever, right? So this is how web hosting took place. Then web hosting moved to this. There were companies like BigRock and GoDaddy that did web hosting for us. So I cannot do web hosting on my own computer, okay, because I will need a static IP. Okay, if I buy a static IP, still there are problems. The problems include I have to keep my computer running 24/7. Okay, because at any point of time, user may ask uh, for my website. User may request my website. Right, so I have to keep it running 24/7, and then I have to do lots of maintaining of my system. Okay, I have to make sure that my power is always on. Okay, then I have to keep backup of my data. All right, so I have to regularly backup my data so that if something happens, I can restore the backup and run. Okay, apart from that, I have to keep backup computer most probably, because if something happens to my main computer, my main server, then I should immediately shift to my backup server. Okay, so this and many other things have to be taken care of. All right, so that was the traditional method. In traditional method, the problem arose was this. Say I am serving some website. Okay, say I am serving the website where metric result will be declared. So throughout the year, okay, I am not going to have any uh, visitor at all. Okay, nobody is going to visit my website throughout the year. So there will be no processing happening almost on my server throughout the year. Okay, so what will happen on the day the result is going to be declared? Suddenly lakhs of people are going to come in and they will try to access my website simultaneously, and suddenly this computer that was not running at all throughout the year will be overwhelmed, and then it will not be able to provide uh, access to everybody. Okay, so what do I buy a computer so powerful that it can serve lakhs of requests simultaneously? So that will require, say, 64 core uh, processor, okay, 32 core processor, then 32 GB RAM, for example. So all these things, do I buy them so that it will be used only for a day throughout the year, and it will remain completely unused in the rest of the year? So do I do that? That would be gross underutilization of my device, right? Throughout the year. And then even after buying this, what will happen if, say, I was expecting 1 lakh people to visit on the day of my result, okay, throughout the day. Now what will happen if everyone visits at the same time? Although I have a very powerful PC, this PC will not be able to accommodate all the requests. So I will need even more powerful PC that I don't have now. Okay, so I have all this underutilization, overutilization, both these things may occur. Now this is one problem. Another problem is when this thing that I was talking about, training some machine learning model. Okay, now to do machine learning, okay, most of the time I am not going to do this training. Okay, I will spend very less amount of time doing training of my model. Most of the time I will have my model deployed. I will be running this model. So to run this model, to test this model, I don't need that much processing as much as I need to train this model. So to do good type of training, I will need some computer that can have massive parallelization. Okay, so this can be given to me by GPUs. So we talked about this in computer architecture. So what do I do? Do I buy a very powerful computer that has lots of GPU that I will use very rarely? Of course, I will use. I need to train my model, but I will train my model very rarely. So to do this, do I buy a complete computer? That is the other problem. So hosting website. Let us go back to that. There are companies like BigRog and GoDaddy. Like, so we can buy server in this from this company. We can buy hosting space. They will give us IP address, they will give us some hosting space, they will give us some number of processor. But then this type of hosting will not be called cloud computing. Okay, these are shared hosting because you do not have complete access over what you can do. Okay, so what I mean to say is this: you can in BigRock or GoDaddy, if you buy this shared hosting, okay, you will not be able to install new software. For example, if they give you MySQL, uh, okay, and then you want to modify the configuration file of MySQL, you will not be able to do that. Why? Because you don't own this computer. You are just a tenant who is renting this computer. Now in cloud computing, the difference is that you will be given more access. Okay, and then what will happen in this metric result situation? Okay, what will happen? You will be given, say, 1 GB of RAM and one processor, okay, throughout the year. You don't have any request at all. So your 1 GB of RAM and one processor is enough to handle your data throughout the year. Now at this date when metric result is being declared, suddenly you see that you have a spike in your request. Okay, so suddenly as you demand this new uh, processing power and memory, suddenly you will be allocated, okay, this new, say you are now allocated 32 processor and 32 GB of RAM as you need, or if you need more you will be allocated say 64 processor, say 1 TB of RAM, okay. So as you need you will be allocated more and more power, okay. So once you are done serving this 1 lakh people, okay, on the day of the result, next day onward you don't have any more request at all, and suddenly you can go back to using this one processor and 1 GB of RAM. So see, this is what cloud computing can provide you. And then cloud computing can provide you all this in a virtual machine. So that is something that this shared hosting on GoDaddy will not provide you. Okay. So virtual machine, what will happen? You will be given one virtual machine that you can access through uh, SSH. Okay, you can access the terminal of that machine, and then you can install anything that you want. Okay, so say you want to install MySQL some very old version, you can install that. You can modify the configuration file of whatever you have installed as if you are using your own computer. Okay, you will have as much access as if you are using your own computer, as if you have root level access in Linux terminology, as if you have that kind of access to that computer, right? So that would be your virtual machine. So yeah, this is what cloud computing gives you. Now this diagram shows different aspects of cloud computing. You have the infrastructure, the physical hardware, okay. So that could be your processor, that could be your storage, that could be your networking devices. So all these things will make the infrastructure on top of which your cloud computing will actually work, okay. On top of this you may be provided platform, okay. So platform to store object, identity. So we have something called identity as a service in cloud computing, okay. So Google gives Google Cloud Platform. They give you identity as a service. If you access this service, you can do this. Say in your company, you are working in a company. So what people should access, which file, okay. Those kind of thing can be managed through this identity as a service over the cloud, okay. Then you can have managed mobile, okay. So which user will use your company provided mobile, and if that user leaves the your company, the mobile will be automatically formatted or locked. If someone loses from your company, someone loses a device, that device will be locked. So all these identity related services and issues can be automatically handled from the cloud, through the cloud, okay. So this is also provided by Google identity as a service. Then there are runtime environments that may be provided. For example, your this Google App Engine, they give you Python runtime, they give you Java runtime, Go programming language runtime, on which you can write and deploy your Python or Java or Go application. Right. Then you have queue, message queue, where like it's a queue of messages. You push messages into the queue. Someone who is subscribed to the queue will receive this message one by one. Example of this is Cloud MQTT that we already talked about when we were talking about MQTT. Okay. Then database may be provided. See, the difference between this and infrastructure is actual hardware. Okay. Platform is some software on which you can build your application, right? So on top of platform, on top of this runtime, so runtime is a platform, database is a platform. You will say you are provided Python runtime and MySQL database. So what you can do, you can write your application in program using this MySQL database, and that would be your application, right? So you will write your application on top of this platform. What is in the platform? This runtime and this database, okay. And where are this platform? This runtime will run on the infrastructure right, on some processor. This database will reside on some storage. So this will be your infrastructure. On top of that you have platform, on top of that you have application. So like Google Docs is an application, right? Your Gmail is an application, Zoho Office is an application. So apart from this there are lots of cloud application, right? So you must be knowing lots of these applications. All right. So apart from that, there are lots of users, all these tablet user, desktop server, laptop, phone user that will connect to this cloud and use these services. So services will be provided at different level. Whether you need the actual, do you need raw access to the hardware? In that case, you need access to the infrastructure, or do you need some platform on top of which you are going to write some application? If you need platform, then you will need platform to be provided to you, okay? Or are you going to simply use some software? Am I going to like use this this slide itself on which I am presenting is made on Google Slide. So it's a software that is given to me. So do I need this kind of software? Do I need this kind of application? Right. So these are the different questions that we have to ask in cloud computing. All right. So we have this National Institute of Science and Technology. So not we as Indian, but then in USA there is this NIST. Okay. So NIST, they have said that there are 5 essential characteristics of cloud computing. The 5 different characteristics, they are: on demand self-service, that is, a user can request uh, resources that they want. Okay, say I gave this example, I was using one processor throughout the year, 1 GB of RAM throughout the year. Suddenly I need 32 processor and 32 GB of RAM. Okay, so when I need this, I will demand this. So on demand, I will be automatically provided this service. Okay, a human need not be sitting in their office and then manually giving me this uh, processor and memory. Okay, this should be provisioned to me automatically as I request them. Okay, that is on demand self service. Next is broad network access. So this, in the last diagram we showed that there are lots of different type of users, say phone, laptop, server, desktop, tablet. So we have heterogeneous users. Okay, some of them will be using thick client, for example, uh, full desktop software on PC. Some will be using thin client, very low powered computers, okay, or maybe running just a browser. So thick client, thin client, mobile clients will be there. So lots of different devices will try to access our cloud. So all these devices will access the cloud through the internet. Okay, so we have to provide access to our cloud to all these different devices. Okay, so broad network access has to be provided. Next is resource pooling. Resource pooling is this: the service provider, the person who is providing the cloud, okay, they they will have lots of this computing resources. All right, so lots of computers, lots of processors, lots of storage devices, lots of networking devices, they should be pulled together, okay, and then given to the user. And then what will happen in these devices that are pulled together, lots of different users will use this simultaneously. Say I have one I have a data center, okay, and in this data center I will be providing this data center uh, as a cloud service. Okay, I will be saying that yes, I have this data center, you can host your application on my data center. Okay, I will be providing you my processing capability, my storage and my networking capabilities. So you write your you can use my uh, these things that I have provided: processing, network, storage. All right, so I will pull together all these different, my data center will have all these different machine, I will bring them together and give to you. But you will not be the only user who is going to use my data center at one time. Okay, my data center at one point of time will be serving multiple users. So I will have this multiple tenant model. It is called multi-tenancy. Tenant means a person who rents a house. Okay, so if someone rents part of my house, that person would be my tenant. So I will have this house. My data center is my house. I am renting out my house to you. I will have multiple tenants living simultaneously in my house. Say I have different rooms, and different people will stay in different rooms. So I will have multiple tenants living in my house. My house is my data center. My tenants, my rooms are the different things that my tenants need. So you as a person who is taking my who is using my data center, so you are taking my service. So what are the things that you need? I will be giving it to you. I will similarly, someone else will need something else. I will be giving it to him or her. Okay, so in this way I will be serving multiple tenants. So resource pooling and serving multiple tenants, this is one more characteristic of cloud computing. Then we have this rapid elasticity. So as I said already, so as my demand rises, as I need more computation power or more storage, I should be provided more computation power and more storage, okay, rapidly. And then as I need less computation power and less storage, I should be given, I was given more, it should shrink down to less. Okay, so this elasticity, this stretching and shrinking should be rapid, and yes, it should happen automatically. Right. And to an user who is using your cloud host, okay, cloud services, that user should feel that there is an unlimited amount of technology, means unlimited amount of this infrastructure. So if I need whatever amount of storage, whatever amount of processing, that should be provisioned to me. Okay. Then there is measured service. So cloud computing basically has this pay as you need model. Okay. So I will be paying not a fixed amount of price, but I will be paying only how much I am using. Right. So if someone is using one processor throughout the year, he should definitely pay less than someone who is using 32 processors throughout the year. Okay. And then someone who uses one processor for half the year and 32 processor for the other half should be paying somewhere in the middle of these two extremes, right? So in order to, for me to know how much I have used, how much processing I have used, or how much networking, how much RAM I have used, how much broadband, uh, how much bandwidth I have used, uh, how much storage, etc. So all these different things that I can use. So how much I have used, there should be some mechanism with which I can see that this is how much I have used. Okay, so I should be able to see, I should be able to control my users. So this kind of a dashboard should be provided to me. This is one more characteristic of cloud computing. Okay. Next, let us look at some cloud deployment model. Now that I am going to use a cloud, okay, this data center, how will this data center actually be deployed? Where will this data center reside? That question, based on where this is residing, I will have different cloud deployment models. A cloud deployment model is a specific configuration of environmental parameters such as the accessibility and proprietorship, who owns this device, okay, that is proprietorship of the deployment infrastructure and storage size. It means that deployment types vary depending on who controls the infrastructure and where it is resided. So depending on who owns these devices and where these devices are residing, I will have different cloud deployment model. So the different cloud deployment models are public cloud, private cloud, community cloud, and hybrid cloud. So private cloud is this. In our company, in our organization itself, we will have the cloud. Okay, the company itself will own the cloud. It so the thing is that maybe we will ourselves manage the cloud, or somebody else will manage the cloud for us. Okay, but anyway, that infrastructure, all these devices will be owned by us. It will be our private devices. Okay, so this is good because now these are all our devices. This is not some other people's device. And then we will have greater amount of security. Okay, since this is on premise, we will have a greater amount of security, and we can have security features such as firewalls and other this kind of things to prevent others from accessing our data. Okay, so this good thing is there, that we have security, but the thing is that we have to buy, build, manage this thing. Okay, so the benefit of cloud computing, that we don't have to buy hardware. Okay, it's not there in case of private cloud, because our private cloud is owned, managed and built by us. It is our, we have to buy our own hardware, right? So this benefit of cloud computing, that we don't buy hardware, is missing in private cloud. Next is public cloud. A public cloud is there on the internet. It belongs to someone else, and anybody who wants to use this public cloud can purchase, can rent, and then uh, get this service and use this cloud. Okay, so anybody can use this cloud. So where it is going to be located? It's like, in case of private cloud, I am going to decide it is going to reside in my building, right, in my office building. But then in case of public cloud, I don't have say over how the infrastructure will be actually maintained. Okay, so if I buy from Google, so Google's is a private cloud. I have several example here: AWS, Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, Google, Alibaba. Everyone has their data center and devices that they are providing as cloud service over the internet. All right, so I have no say on how this infrastructure will be managed, right? So public cloud, this is good for organization where, this example that I said, I will need more at some point of time, I will need very less at some point of time. So I don't buy hardware. Okay, I don't buy hardware that I will use only for one day a year. So rest of the time it will be underutilized. So this kind of, if I have this issue, then it is better to go for a public cloud. Then we have community cloud. Community cloud is this. Say there are several banks. Okay, State Bank of Mysore, State Bank of India, State Bank of something else. Okay, this is just one community. They are very closely linked. What they will do, they will, among these different people, okay, they will have one cloud. Okay, so they trust in one another, they are almost one organization, so they will have one cloud among themselves. This community will own a cloud. Okay, similarly, say different government organizations, say Ministry of Health, then Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Defense. Okay, so all of them are government departments, right? And say all of them have to use servers, so they can have their, this is one community, the central government, and they have one pool of server. So this is maintained by NIC. Okay, so NIC will maintain this cloud. This community, that is your different government organization, will use this NIC cloud. All right, so this is also maybe maintained internally by people of that community, or maybe this maintenance can be contracted to some third party. All right, so mutually shared model between organizations that belong to a particular community, such as bank, government organization, and commercial enterprises. All right, so they share similar issue of privacy, performance, and security. So this all these different organizations that form a community, they will have similar interests, similar issues, and then they are closely linked together. And so because they are a community, they will own one cloud platform where they will do their computing. All right, so this is community cloud. And then finally we have hybrid cloud, which is composition of private and public cloud. Here what is going to happen, say I have a private cloud. Okay, so throughout the year I am using, suddenly I need more processing capability. Now my private cloud is not able to handle this much capability. I will get this extra capability that I need from some public cloud. Okay, so private and public hybrid together, I will use both these to serve my computation. Then another example is this. Say I have different type of data. I have very confidential data and I have less confidential data. Okay, so confidential data I will keep in my private cloud. My less confidential data, okay, I will keep in public cloud. Okay, this is another example. Then yeah. So hybrid cloud is a composition of public cloud and private environments, such as private cloud or on-premise resources that remain distinct entities but are bound together, offering the benefit of multiple deployment model. So these different things are bound together to offer you multiple deployment models. Okay, so this is how you can extend your capability by aggregation integration with other cloud services. You can take different cloud services and integrate them together to give you some form of a better cloud service. Okay, this is hybrid cloud. All right. So these are all the cloud deployment models. So what are the different cloud deployment models? We have uh, public cloud, private cloud, community cloud, and hybrid cloud. Right. Next, let us look at cloud service models. So clouds, so these providers, they will provide you cloud computing services according to different models. So three standard models are this: infrastructure as a service, yes, okay, IaaS. So here you are provided access to actual infrastructure, actual hardware, actual hardware, not physical hardware, maybe virtualized hardware, but you are given access to hardware. You can now install OS, install your software, whatever you want to do on this hardware. Next is PaaS. Here a service provider offers access to a cloud based environment on which user can build and deliver application. The provider supplies underlying infrastructure. So on top of this infrastructure, okay, on top of this actual hardware, some provider may install operating system and then install some platform that they will provide to you. You, when you buy this, when you get this platform as a service, okay, you will be able to write your application for this platform, and then this PaaS service provider, they will host your application. So they will give you a platform, say Google App Engine, they give you Python runtime and database. Okay, I forgot the name of the database, not Google's object storage maybe. So that is what they will provide, and then you can write according to the rules of syntax, according to the rules of this platform, and then your application will be deployed. All right. Then finally you have SaaS, SaaS. So SaaS is someone has written some cloud software, some software, and then you are simply going to use the software. Okay, so a service provider delivers software and application through the internet. Users subscribe to the software and access it via the web or some API. Okay. So for example, this Google Docs, Gmail, then there are lots of SaaS. Facebook itself is a software as a service. Okay, so yeah, always. So these are the three cloud service model. So IaaS. So in IaaS, they will give you high-level API that you will use to abstract various low-level details of underlying network infrastructure like physical computing resources, location, data partition and scaling, security, backup, etc. Additional resources like VM, disk image library, raw block storage, file or object storage, firewall, load balancer, IP addresses, virtual LAN, and software bundle may be provided. Okay. So yeah, you will be given some API in IaaS through which you will be given access to all these different things. This processor, then all the backup security protocols, everything. Okay, how to do scaling of this processor. Like you have one processor, you want at some other point of time you need 32 processor, then you come back to one processor. Okay, what do you want to do? Okay, so all this thing you will be given API to use all this thing. All right, then you may be given a virtual machine image directory, so where lots of images will reside, say Ubuntu image, Windows image, Fedora image, whatever you want to use, you will pick and use one of them. Then you may be given raw block storage, where you can store block of data. Okay, so data blob, that is called blob, you can store them in block storage. Then you have this key value paired file or object storage. Okay, no SQL type storage. Then you may be provided firewall, you may be provided load balancer. We'll talk about load balancer a little bit later. IP addresses, static IP addresses. Of course, you need static IP addresses if you are trying to do things like web hosting. Okay, then some may be virtualized LAN. Okay, then softwares may also be provided. Okay, software bundle. So all these things you may be provided in case of IaaS. Okay, you will run some sort of a high IaaS provider will do what? They will have actual hardware. Okay, you will use this hardware, but you will not be usually you will not be given raw access to the hardware. What you will be given is a VM. Okay, a virtual machine. So in order to run this virtual machine, the cloud provider will have some kind of a software called a hypervisor. So a hypervisor will run this VM, and you will have this VM. Now pools of hypervisor, so this different machine will have different hypervisor, and this hypervisor will be configured. We'll have some assistive software that will manage whether how much processor should I give to this virtual machine. Okay, so now your one virtual this virtual machine, okay, on which I was running this website that needed one processor. Now suddenly I have more demand, so this virtual machine will be given 32 processor, right? So now I have access to this hardware not directly but through some virtual machine. All right, so yeah, we have software like OpenStack, Apache Cloud Stack, OpenNebula, right? These are cloud operating system, cloud management system that you will run on your data center, right? So using this, what will happen is OpenStack, for example. Okay, there are lots of different modules that OpenStack has. OpenStack, for example, there is Nova to do uh, this processing. Okay, then there is Swift to do object storage. Okay, Cinder for image storage, for example. Okay, I may be messing up the names. All right, but then all you have all these modules. You have Silometer that is used to do metering, how much a user can see, how much this thing how much processing he has used, how much bandwidth he has used, how much storage he has used to do this metering. Okay, so this module Silometer in case of OpenStack, they have all these modules to do these different aspects of cloud computing. Okay, so if you have some data center and if you install OpenStack on your data center, you will be able to provide your hardware, okay, to end user like VM, and this end user can use your hardware to run their things, right? Then the end user can use this one more module. OpenStack has something called Horizon. Using it is the dashboard of OpenStack. So this end user can use Horizon to log in, then create virtual machine, run their application on virtual machine. They can use Horizon to access Silometer, using which they can see how much different things they have used. Right. So all this thing, you need not write software by yourself. This kind of software is there. OpenStack, I was talking about OpenStack, but then apart from that, that Apache Cloud Stack is there, OpenNebula is there. So all this softwares are there. Okay, so this software run hypervisor. Hypervisor will run some guest OS. Okay, we'll run some virtual machine. So alternative to hypervisor is something called Linux container. Okay, we will talk about Linux container later on. Next we have PaaS, platform as a service. Okay, in PaaS, what happens? Cloud provider, they give you some computing platform that will include operating system, some programming language execution environment, database, web server. All this thing will be provided. Okay, you as a application developer will do what? You will use this platform and you will write your software for this platform. Okay, so you don't need to worry about hardware. Okay, hardware will be managed by this platform provider. Okay, so this platform is given to you. You just worry about how to implement your software on this platform. Okay, so with some PaaS provider, your computing and storage resources will scale up and down as needed automatically. So, right, so because of this you don't have to manage anything, you just have to worry about writing your software, right? So this is PaaS. So Google App Engine, Windows Azure, these are example of PaaS. Then there is Heroku app. Okay, that is also a famous PaaS platform. Then you have SaaS, software as a service. Here they have installed application. They have some application on their server. You are just going to use that application like Google Docs or Microsoft Office 365, right? Okay. So all these things will be in the cloud itself. So you need not worry about all these things. So you do not worry about how the application is deployed. You don't worry about what is the platform on which it is built. You don't worry about what is the infrastructure on which the platform is running. You just use the software. All right. So this does what? You will use your browser to use the software mainly. Okay, so you don't have to worry even about installing the software in your own PC. Okay, the software is installed in the cloud. You access the software from the cloud and use the software. Okay, so you don't even have to worry about maintenance and all this kind of thing. Okay, the software will be automatically maintained on the cloud. And one more advantage is that you don't need to install updates. So once they install the update on the cloud, the updated software will be delivered to you automatically. So you don't have to worry about installing updates also in case of software as a service. So this is software as a service, right? So we have this three service model: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Here we have given this diagram shows you what are the different aspects that you have to manage and what are the different aspects that this service provider will manage. In case of the traditional way, uh, traditional this thing, computing model, okay, legacy IT, everything was managed by us, the developer, right? From data center to networking, storage, server, virtualization, OS, database, security, application, everything was managed by the customer itself. Okay, there was no concept of someone else managing this for us. There was no concept of cloud. Okay, then after this is infrastructure as a service. Here all this thing, data center, networking, storage, server, virtualization will be given to us. Okay, we don't need to manage this hardware. This will be given to us as a service by the service provider. This will be given to us, this networking, then server to do processing, storage to store our files, and then this virtualization environment on which these are the things that we will do. We will install some operating system, we will install some database, we will worry about security, and we will write our application after we have installed this operating system and all the libraries and runtimes necessary. Everything from the operating system point onwards, everything will be done by us. Okay, then comes platform as a service. Here almost everything will be given to us We just have to write the application. All right, even database, operating system, runtime, everything will be given to us. And finally, software as a service. Even the software will be given to us. We just need to use it. All right. So when we write some software on this PaaS platform and give this software to someone, probably that becomes software as a service. We will be becoming SaaS providers. All right. So these are the different cloud service models. So to recall what we have done till now, okay, we have seen that there are 5 essential characteristics, that we need broad network access, we need rapid elasticity, we need measured service, we need on-demand self-service, and different resources, they will be pulled together and provided to us. Okay, these are the essential characteristics. Then what are the service models? SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. What are the deployment model? Public, private, hybrid, and community cloud. Okay, so this diagram, if you remember this diagram and you understand what we have talked about till now, you will be able to write about all these 3 different things. All right. Next, let us talk about what is virtualization. So I said that IaaS gives some virtualized computer to you, right? So you can install operating system, you can install your own software, right? So what is it that is actually happening? Virtualization is this: you have some hardware, on top of your hardware there is some operating system, usually on top of this operating system this special kind of software runs. This is called hypervisor. Okay, hypervisor is responsible for running this guest operating system. So there will be several guest operating system that will run on top of this hypervisor. There are famous hypervisor like VMware, VirtualBox. I know most of you have used something like this at one point of time. If not, then go ahead and download one. It is not such a big file, and then experiment, okay, on your own PC. You don't even need a high-end PC. 4 GB of RAM, uh, provided you don't have lots of applications running in the background. 4 GB of RAM, you divide 2 GB to your host operating system and give 2 GB to your guest operating system, you would be able to run a guest OS. Okay, not easily, but then at least you will be able to run. So on top of our hardware, okay, we have some OS. On top of that OS there is some software hypervisor VMware running, and in this VMware we will install different OSs. These are called guest OS, and then in this OS we will install our requirements, our dependencies, all these binary files, libraries that we need, and using this we will write our application in this guest OS. So this architecture is the architecture of virtualization. Okay, so there's hypervisor that I was talking about. There are 2 kinds of hypervisor. Okay, one is this type 1 hypervisor. This hypervisor, compare it with this or this is type 2 hypervisor, this is type 1 hypervisor. This type 1 hypervisor is also called bare metal hypervisor. This type 2 hypervisor is also called what hosted hypervisor. All right, so in bare metal hypervisor, type 1 hypervisor, you can see there is no host operating system. Okay, so your hypervisor itself works as if it is the host operating system. Okay, the hypervisor will run directly on your hardware, so it will run directly on the metal, so it is called bare metal hypervisor. All right, so this is one architecture where your hypervisor runs directly on the hardware and your different operating system runs on top of the hypervisor. Okay, these are the guest operating system. This type 2 hypervisor, this architecture, here the hardware will be there. On top of the hardware some operating system will run. On top of this operating system the hypervisor will run, and in top of this hypervisor your guest OS will run. Okay, so this is this will have more this thing latency. Okay, So there is a large overhead. There is one host operating system, there is guest operating system, there is hypervisor, there is at least one more layer of overhead compared to type 1 hypervisor. Okay. Now there is this new technology, not new, but then recently it is becoming very famous because of one software that we are going to talk about next. This technology called container. Okay. So in hypervisor, what is happening? There is this infrastructure, right? Hardware. On top of your hardware, you have this host operating system. On top of this host operating system, you have this hypervisor, and above this, you have this guest operating system, right? So in host operating system, you have some kernel. Okay, if your host operating system is Linux, you have some kernel. Okay, this Linux kernel. Your guest operating system also has a kernel. So there is two complete operating system running simultaneously. Okay, your host, and here there is four operating system running simultaneously. In this there are three guest operating system, right? So there are four kernels that are running at a time simultaneously. Four operating system, four full-fledged operating system that are running simultaneously. This introduces lots of overhead, lots of slowdown, latency of the process. Okay. Compare this virtual machine hypervisor based system to this container based system. Here what will happen? I will have this operating system. On top of this, I will have some container engine. Okay. There is no guest operating system. Okay. So it is also a form of virtualization. Okay. So we will install our library and our binaries on guest operating system. Here I will install on top of the operating system itself. Okay, so the thing is that it is almost similar, but then there is no separate kernel. The kernel will be shared. Okay, the host operating system's kernel itself will be used over here. Okay, but this is still virtualization. There is separation of this binaries and libraries installed. So a binary installed over here is not accessible from this container. Okay, these are separate entities as if they are different virtual machine, but then in virtual machine, in hypervisor based model, your entire operating system, full operating system will be running in several instances. Here full operating system will not run. Okay, only uh, the required things will run. The kernel, whatever we can use from the main operating system, from the host operating system, will be used. Okay, so this, the latency is far less than what is there in our old model. Okay, so this is container based virtualization. One famous software for container based virtualization is Docker. Okay, so Docker, there are several entities in Docker. We can build Docker images and put them in Docker registry. Docker Hub is there. Okay, Docker Hub is an example of a Docker registry. Hold on, sorry. Uh, yeah, so Docker Hub is there where lots of images will be there. For example, Ubuntu image is there. One interesting thing about Docker in this container, because the kernel will be shared with guest operating system, when I download this image for Ubuntu, okay, this image is less than or around 100 MB. Okay, this is a full operating system, but then the kernel is not here. It has the power of a full operating system, right? So still, because lots of things will be shared with the from the guest operating system, this entire Ubuntu operating system, the image, Docker image of Ubuntu is around 100 MB. Okay, so these images will be there in the registry. I can build image and put it in registry, or I can pull images from the registry. Okay, the images I can pull from my registry and keep in my computer. Okay, my image repository, my in my own computer. Then I can run these images. So once I start running, it will Once I run some image, it will start running inside some container. Then I can get inside this container, and then using a terminal I can use uh, I can run this Ubuntu. Say I am running Ubuntu. Okay, like I will run Ubuntu in any other system, right? So this is what I have. Uh, you will get access to the terminal, then you can install software. Okay, uh, see, I told you this is 150 uh, around 100 mbps, right? Sorry, 100 MB. This entire image size is around 100 MB. So even your we use install software in Ubuntu using this apt-get install VLC, for example, right? But then in this Ubuntu, Python is not there. Okay, so Python is there usually when we download Ubuntu from Ubuntu website. But if you download from Docker registry, even Python will be missing. So what are we going to do? We are going to run this apt-get install Python. But then if I run this, I will get an error that Python is not available. Why will I get that error? Because this repository itself, okay, this apt-get package information is even missing. Okay, that is how they shrunk it even further. So what do I have to do? First, I will have to download the package information. I will do this apt-get sudo apt-get update, sudo apt-get upgrade. I will run these two commands. That is how I will install. I will first download the package information. After that, when I run sudo apt-get install Python, then yes, now Python will be found. This is the location of Python, and they will download and install Python. Ubuntu will install Python on your this container virtual machine. Okay, so yeah, Docker is very powerful, very interesting. You can write simple YAML file to create Docker images. Okay, then there is this thing, uh, how to say this example metric website, which is not used throughout the year and used by lakhs of people in one day. Okay, suddenly, so I will have only one Docker instance, say, running at one time. Okay, and then one Docker container at one time. Suddenly, when my spike of users come in, I will need lots of different containers running my application. Okay, so this scaling up, scaling down. Okay, this management of all these different computer images, all these different containers has to be done. There is something called Docker Swarm. Okay, that does all this thing. So you can use Docker Swarm to do container management. Okay, or else there is something else which is becoming very popular nowadays. It is called Kubernetes. So you can use Kubernetes as well to do this management of the scaling up and down. Okay, in different computers. So your data center will have multiple computer. So maybe half the users will be served by one computer, another half by another computer. So the scaling, this distribution will be done. All this management will not be done by Docker. It can be done by Docker Swarm, or it can be done by Kubernetes. All right. So these are technologies. I'm not going to talk about Kubernetes now. Okay, so then there is this cloud operating system, OpenStack. I already talked about OpenStack. You will have your standard hardware, then you will have an operating system layer which is not shown here, then you will have OpenStack, and on top of OpenStack you will have all these different modules for storage, Cinder, then Swift, different things are there. Then modules for networking, modules for computing, Nova, modules, dashboard, Horizon. So all these different modules to do different things will be there. Using this OpenStack application, you can, if you have hardware, you can provide your hardware as an infrastructure as a service. Okay, uh, so you can be in IaaS service provider by installing OpenStack on your data center. Okay, so this is cloud operating system, this OpenStack. This is one more interesting software. Then there is this software called load balancer. So say you have several servers. Okay, now this all these servers are running your application. Load balancer will do what? when different clients come in, load balancer will distribute your clients to all these different server. Okay, so load balancer will directly get the request, send it to the server, and the server will directly send the data to the client. Okay, so what will happen? One server will not be overwhelmed with lots of clients coming together. Okay, so that will slow down that server. If all the users are directed to one server, okay, that will slow down the server. So if you have multiple server, okay, and you direct everyone to one server, there are two problems. One, your server becomes slower. Number two, the other servers that you have, they are not utilized. So what is the best thing to do? To distribute your users evenly among all these servers. Okay, so to do this distribution, you have load balancer. So load balancer, uh, there are different types of load balancer. And then there is hardware load balancer, okay, and then there is software load balancer, there is even cloud based load balancer. So Amazon has a load balancer, right? I forgot the name of the Amazon AWS load balancer. I'm sorry. Okay, now load balancer, these different types, and apart from that, load balancer, okay, may will also do one thing. If some server breaks down, okay, load balancer will not forward to that server. It will forward to now all the other server that did not break down. Okay, so there is now, from server perspective, no single server becomes a single point of failure. If some server breaks down, the other servers will be there to uh, serve the clients. Okay, load balancer now becomes the point of failure. Okay, load balancer, if load balancer now breaks down, you will not be able to access cloud, your clients. So what they have done is they have now uh, have this model where they have distributed load balancer. Okay, so even load balancer will have backup. There are two modes: active passive and active active. uh, so there are lots of things that are going on in load balancer itself. This is one more technology that you can look at if you are interested in cloud computing. Okay, so Kubernetes, Docker Swarm, they have load balancers. They have the ability to do load balancing, right? So when you have lots of container, how do you distribute your user requests to all these different container that are running your application? So all these things will be done in this container also. So this has to be also done. Okay, so these are some technologies that I wanted to introduce to you. Okay, you don't need to know about depth of these technologies for the purpose of this course. Okay, but then if you are interested, you can go ahead and learn for yourself uh, at your own time. All right. So yeah, these are some technologies that I wanted to introduce you to. Now, see, you know that using Google Cloud Platform and Amazon Web Services, you have to give your credit card information. Okay, so this is one website that I want to introduce to you. This is called Qwiklabs, Quiklabs. What they do is they give you access. Okay, they give you user ID and password through which you can access GCS, GCP, Google Cloud Platform, and AWS, and then you can go over there and you can run application, you can run some experiment. So Quick Labs gives you hand-on training, okay, on using these two cloud service platform. Okay, so let us look at Quick Labs for ourselves. Okay, hold on. Okay, so this is Quick Lab. All right, so there are lots of experiments in here that you can do. For example, you can learn about Kubernetes. You can learn lots of experiments are here, lots of courses are here. Let me show you how to create a virtual machine on Google Cloud platform. Okay, so what will happen is this. I will be given 40 minutes to do this experiment. Okay, here what is it that I am going to do? The experiment, I will create a Google Cloud, I will create a virtual machine using GCP console. I will create a virtual machine using gcloud command, and I will deploy a web server on this virtual machine. Okay, so here you will be given all the steps on how to do this lab. Okay, so one thing that I want to tell you, they will give me user ID and password. Okay, I have to use this user ID and password when I log into this Google console. Okay, if I use my own personal user ID and password, I may be billed for what I am using. Okay, so if I use this, it will be for free. All right, so make sure you don't make that mistake. So best thing to do would be to use this in incognito mode. Okay, so if you use access Google Cloud platform in incognito mode, there is no risk of accidentally logging in. Okay, so all these different steps on how to do this. What is the experiment? The experiment is to run creating a virtual machine. So all the steps to create this virtual machine are written over here. If you follow these steps point by point, you will learn this experiment. Similarly, lots of other experiments are here. Okay, and then what will happen once you run something? Okay, hold on. Okay, once you create a virtual machine, once you have done everything, okay, up to this point, for example, you will click here, and then you will be given some score on whether you have done this thing. Okay, so let us go ahead and run an experiment. We will be given 40 minutes to run this experiment. I hope I will not need 40 minutes to do this. Okay, I will follow a few rules just to be safe. I will these are some configurations that are given to me. I will follow this configuration. Okay, uh, so let me show what I'm talking about. Okay, okay, sorry. There is one way in which I can show this to you. Okay, hold on. Okay, so this is one different experiment. Okay, I am just going to create a virtual machine anyway. Okay, I should not be probably showing this to you, but anyway. So I have to do this. This is the user ID that I am given. Okay, so I go next. This is my password. I give it here and I go next. Oh, sorry, this is not my password. This is my password. Okay, I provide it here. I go next. Okay, so I will accept this. I will confirm. So these are all the. This is fine. Okay, so this is the G Cloud terminal. Okay, G shell, Cloud shell. So I will start this shell. Here I can run different commands like Linux commands. Okay, so it takes some time. In the meantime, let me show you all this. This is the billing center. You can activate your APIs what you want over here. Uh, you have this Kubernetes engine, compute engine. Okay, we will go to compute engine. Then you have database, different type of database. Okay, storage is there. You can run SQL. You have big table like this is almost like this SQL tables. Okay, then you have all these different tools. PubSub, IoT Core, data flow. PubSub is MQTT, like based on MQTT message actions, publish subscribe message actions. Then IoT Core lets you configure devices. Then data flow, you can run various jobs. Okay, so these are all the different things that are here. Okay, so as I was saying to you, this is the Google Cloud Console. Here you can see run different commands. So I have run this command. It is saying who are the different users. Okay, so this is the user. This is the user ID with which I logged in, right? So this is the user. Then I can run say ls. This is the file that is here, right? So here I can run different files. I will access my cloud computer that I am given. Okay, now I will do one thing. I hope I have access to do that. Okay, I can go to compute engine VM instances. Okay, let me say I have one VM instance already running, but let me see if I can create a different VM instance. I'm going to call it JEC IoT. Okay, then I should specify Asia East one or something, Asia South one. Okay, so that will be my zone. So uh, I should specify the place which is closest to me. So here I will specify what is the this thing. Uh, image. What are the different images available? What are the different operating system that I want to run? I have Debian, I have Ubuntu. Okay, say Ubuntu. What is the Ubuntu version that I want to run? Say 2004. Okay, what is the disk size? 10 GB. Okay, then what do I want to allow in my firewall? Two things that are very commonly used. If I want to do web hosting, I will allow HTTP and HTTPS in my IP table. Okay, so IP table configuration I can directly manage from here itself. For these two basic thing, okay, HTTP and HTTPS. For complex rule, you have to go and use command. Okay, so JEC IoT, and let me try to create. Okay, it has been created. It is now trying to boot this virtual machine. I hope it will run. Okay, it has started running. Now I will connect to this virtual machine uh, through SSH. I can connect to this virtual machine. Okay, but I will connect using this shell. Okay, this SSH one shell will be provided in the browser itself. So this is one more advantage. I can use telnet, or I can use putty to connect to this VM also, like from your lab from your lab you connect to these VMs, right? So in the same way you connect to your server, in the same way I can connect to this VM. What is the problem? Yeah, now I have logged in. So here I can see that I'm running Linux. Then what I can do, ls. Okay, there is nothing in here. I can do one thing. I can let me see, is Python available? Okay, Python is not available. I have to install Python. Okay, okay, Python 3 might be available. Let me see. Yes, Python 3 is available. So let me write some Python program. Okay, so sorry. Fine. So yeah, this is available. Now I do ls. I can see that there is this file. Then I will run hello.py. Yeah, so I have executed this Python program inside this virtual machine. Okay, so next what am I going to do? So yeah, you have this shell. You can do anything you want. You can install some VNC server, and then you can use some VNC software to get GUI in access to this virtual machine, right? So you can have remote desktop technology to access this virtual machine. Anything that you want to do, you say I can install uh, some web server, okay, in this. So let us say I want to install Nginx. Okay, this is the command that I have to give. Let me copy the command. Sorry. Okay, I have to do sudo apt update. This is the first thing that I have to run. Okay, then sorry. Okay, so I have installed a web server in my virtual machine. Okay, what is the IP address of my virtual machine? External IP address is this. So if I go and put this IP address, I can see that this web server is installed. I can now access this website from my browser of my computer. Okay, where is this website running? This website is running inside this virtual machine, which is running where? This is running in Google Cloud Platform. Okay, so yeah, now I can modify file. If I modify file, my file, this will be modified. Okay, so these are lots of things that you can do. Uh, Anything that you can do on any computer, you can do on this virtual machine. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm not going to show you anything else regarding this uh, virtual machine. So yeah, this is one virtual machine that you have. So apart from this virtual machine, there are lots of other things. I already talked about a few of them. App Engine is a PaaS platform. Okay, this is also very good. Then this thing, data flow, you can run jobs. Okay, you can run short program uh, to do things. For example, say some sensor is uh, publishing some IoT device is publishing sensor data to uh, through MQTT to this PubSub, okay, to this Google Cloud Platform. So what you can do, you have data flow template, okay. So for example, this PubSub topic to be wait. So yeah, this is one, for example, one template that is already given. So it will read your PubSub event, okay. So it will read this MQTT sensor data that is coming in. Then after every 5 minutes, it will write whatever it has read into some file in a storage. Okay, so the program to do this is already given over here. Then you have to fill out some parameters like what is the topic. Like in MQTT we have topic, in PubSub also we have topic. Okay, so what is the exact name of the topic, where you are going to save the file, and then some prefix of the file. Like you want your file to be my file -1, my file -2. So what is the prefix my file, that you have to write, and you have to provide a temporary location. Okay, once you have provided all this, you can start the job by clicking run job, and then this will keep running in the background. Okay, so these are some available jobs that you can use that are already given to you. Apart from this, you can create your own jobs. Okay, so this is what you have. This is the Google Cloud Platform. Okay, so I am an admin. I already talked to you about uh, this identity as a service. Okay, so you can manage identity, you can manage your companies, who are the different users, what type of users are there, okay, which user has what level of access, all this thing you can manage over here. Okay, So yeah, this is Google Cloud Platform. I will not talk too much about Google Cloud Platform. Okay, you go to Quick Lab and you experiment on your own. So with this, we have come to the end of this video. Okay, this video on cloud computing. So I hope you have understood everything in this video. We talk essentially about three important things. One is the characteristic of cloud, then deployment models, then service model. Then we saw a few key technologies that are used in cloud computing. We did not go into any depth about this technology. I just introduced a few of them to you. Then we saw what is this Quick Lab. This allows you to have hands-on experience by working with this different Google Cloud Platform and Amazon Web Service. Okay, so yeah, this is Quick Lab. So there is this course on Coursera. There are several Google Cloud courses on Coursera right now, which are available for you for free. So if you do these courses, you will get lots of hands-on training on different aspects of Google Cloud platform. Even AWS certificates are also available for free. So you can do these certification courses. You will get certificate and then you will learn a lot. So you will be able to access this platform, which usually cost money. So lots of benefits by doing one thing, right? So go ahead and do it if you have time. So I hope you have understood everything in today's video. Uh, if not, you can reach out to me through mail. You can send WhatsApp message. You can call, or you can write your doubt in the comment section below. In the next video, we will talk about sensor as a service. Okay, this is provided by something called Sensor Cloud. We will be talking about different aspects of Sensor Cloud. So see you in the next video. Thank you for watching this video.